so in today's video, I'm going to show you how you can turn any field recording into drum samples. Now for this purpose, I'm here in this metal workshop where I will capture these field recordings, and later on in the video I will go downstairs into my studio where I will chop up these recordings and mix these samples so that I can actually also use them as samples to build my drums. Now for these recordings in here, I'm going to use the NTG5 shotgun microphone by Rode, and I'm recording into the Mixbury 6 by Sound Devices. So this is the recording setup. And as for the exciters, so the sticks that I'm going to use to create these sounds, I will be using 3 different sticks. So these are the drum sticks right here. Later on I have these xylophone sticks, and in the end I have some custom built softer drumsticks. So I just wrapped around 2 cloths, like tablecloths around these drumsticks, so that I can create also some softer sounds. But before we start, I actually just quickly have to turn off these lights because maybe you can hear it. They make a really buzzing sound. And I don't want to have that on my recording. So let's just quickly switch the light and then I'm ready to record. All right, so the sound is gone now. So let's start recording. So before I start recording, I always have to make sure that my gain level is actually set at the right level so that my sounds are not too loud and not too quiet. Now I myself am lucky enough to have a recorder which records in 32-bit floating point, and for these kind of sounds which are very transient heavy, this is very beneficial because this will prevent a lot of clipping, because in post-production you can actually just reduce the volume and the clipping is gone. Now, what I also quickly have to mention is that in this room right here, we have quite a lot of reverb. So the reverb of this room will be on all these recordings. If you go outside, it's definitely better because there's no reverb. But then again, you have a lot of external sounds that might interfere. If you want to actually capture all of these samples without any reverb on it, you would have to go into a studio and take all this material into the studio and record it there. All right, so I think I have enough sounds now. So I'm gonna go downstairs now into my studio, and I'm gonna take these sounds and I will turn them into drum samples. All right, so let's go. So I dragged already all my recordings into Ableton, and in total these are 6 recordings. And the first thing that I wanted to show you is right here, for example, we have this effect that I showed you before. So it looks like these samples here are clipping. So the line goes basically above 0. And if we listen to it, we can see that on the master channel it actually clips. And if you go now into the channel and we just dial down the volume of the clip, so the gain of the actual clip, until these peaks go below 0 and we zoom in, we can see that there's no actual clipping happening. So that's actually really nice when you use 32-bit floating points that you have this option. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just gonna scan through all these recordings and look for samples that I most like, that I most prefer, and I will cut them out and put them onto a new channel. Once I did that, I will edit these recordings and mix them a little bit, maybe also layer them, and at the end I will make a beat out of them. So let's start with the scanning and cutting out part first. What I like to do is I always like to set a fade, a very small fade in at the beginning of my samples, and also a fade out at the end. Now the reverb will be very audible on these samples. So if we just listen to this sample right here, we can hear this part is almost only the reverb. And what you can do is you can just basically shorten the clip a little bit and make a fade out, and then the reverb is gone a little bit. And I'm actually also looking for some rhythmic things. So for some samples that could be looped. So maybe if you change the timing of these sounds a little bit, this could be quite an interesting percussion loop. Alright, so now I collected all my favorite samples that I want to use for my beat. Next up, I will start to edit them. And while I will edit them, I will also start to create the beat. So I'm kind of doing this at the same time now. Alright, let's go. So first I want to start out with a kick drum, and for that I'm gonna use the cupboard and the door from the cupboard. Let's just put that on a new track and delete it up here, so I'm not gonna use the sample twice. Let's make it shorter a lot. It's gonna be a hard one. Maybe I need something else. Maybe this is almost better. Let's try out with that. Let's put a spectrum analyzer on my master because I want to see what is actually happening here. So there's a lot of low frequencies here. Here also. I think I'm gonna take this one right here, and I might have to layer it with another sound. So this one right here is actually really nice for a click for the kick drum. I just have to cut away the low end. So if you build a kick drum and you layer sounds, it's very important that all these layers are in phase, especially if the layer has some lower frequency content. If you put these waves on top of each other and they have the same wave cycles, so here, for example, the wave goes up above 0 and then goes down again, right? And here it does the same. And you want to make sure that they don't cancel each other out. So if they go the opposite side, right? So here you are now above 0 and here you're below 0. And this is bad because now the speaker wants to go out and at the same time it wants to go inward. And in the end it will just stay in the middle and they will cancel each other out. And let's print this kick drum on a new track right now, so we can also see how this waveform looks now combined. So now I have this higher frequency here, but it's still not clicking at the beginning very much. So what I want to have is a really like very sharp transient right here that we don't have at the moment. So I'm going to look for something else that I can maybe use. Maybe this. Or this. So I'm gonna try out both of these two samples and let's see which one works better for the transient at the beginning. Yeah, so this like very first peak right here, that's what I meant. I need this to make a little bit more of an impact at the beginning of my kick drum. Let's try out the other one. Maybe this one is actually better, but I'm just still gonna try it. That actually sounds not bad. So the thing is that normally a kick drum is basically just a sine wave, and the pitch goes from very high to very low, I have to try to make this a bit more simpler. I really like to use this plugin right here to just boost the lows a little bit on a kick drum, because it basically creates some kind of low cut with a resonance at this point right here. Yeah, here we go. That slowly starts to look like a kick drum. So it was actually this plugin which helped me to go from this to this, because it just kind of like boosted the low end a little bit, and this created like these really smooth waves. Alright, so now I also added a saturator, so this just creates some harmonic overtones, and you can choose here the band that you want to apply. And I also added another high cut and also some compression. And let's just quickly record that again to a new audio channel to see how this waveform looks like. I say it's not a perfect kick drum, and I would also not make my kick drums like that. I would make them with a synthesizer instead of a sample. But now we're getting actually to the interesting parts with the more higher drums. So let's keep going with hi-hats and claps and all of that stuff. So let's take one of these, and this time I'm gonna put it actually in a sampler, drag and drop it onto a new MIDI track, and it will automatically create the simpler with this hi-hat in it. So let's also add some saturation to that. And let's actually also clip this hi-hat a little bit, because the transient is quite heavy at the beginning, and we can cut that away a little bit with a clipper. And there are, of course, a ton of resonances on these hi-hats. So maybe I can take them a little bit out. For example, this one is peaking out quite heavily. I'm just taking out some resonances that bother me. Or that are too sharp. And now let's try to use our open hi-hats that we had somewhere. I think it's this one. Yeah. Yeah, that's better. I'm just cutting away the beginning of this hi-hat a little bit, because I just like actually this last part of it. I'm also gonna put a sidechain compression on it so that it actually gets triggered with the kick drum. Let's use that. So I'm going to do a lot of low cuts on most of my drums, because I think that there's a lot of rumble on these microphones sometimes, because if there's a car driving by outside or a train or something, you can also hear it on it, and it's just much safer to just cut it away if you don't need it. And yeah, if you work with very short field recording samples, it is really handy to use saturation, because saturation will just make these sounds fuller and fatter, because most of the times they're quite in a very narrow frequency spectrum. And if you want to make a sample like just sounding fatter, you can either layer it, or you can also just saturate it to make it also frequency wise a bit richer. So with a little bit of delay, this sounds actually really nice. I can make probably some really nice claps from these. Let's find something where we can layer this clap with, because now it's only this like very sharp, like almost one frequency only, and I want to have some more noise that I can add to this clap there. Let's try to use this one. Let's actually make this loop twice as long now, because I think I can already make some changes here, so I'm gonna only add this once. And I think this one I could also make a bit wider. So let's use the ozone imager, because all these samples are mono, right? Yeah, let's use that now. Alright, so now let's actually create some melodic elements down here, because I think I'm gonna use this string now. I'm just gonna use this string as a bass, so I'm just gonna pitch it down a lot, and I have to tune it a little bit because I think it's out of tune, probably. So what I used on here is actually OTT, and OTT is basically just multiband dynamics at a very extreme level, and yeah, this creates this really gnarly effect. So it also boosts the self-noise of the recording quite a lot, but I think it actually kind of fits to this vibe that we have right here going. So the problem with this bass right now is just that it cannot really be tuned, because in the bass itself, it always has some changes of pitches, and you would probably almost have to use auto-tune for this bass to like level this out. But I just wanted to like keep it as it is, to keep this like original vibe to it. That one sounds nice. So the timing of these samples are actually also quite important. Like, I try to just like move them around a little bit, and I try to hear how the groove also changes, because I think they don't necessarily have to be directly on the grid, And sometimes it's even better if not all the transients are on one spot, because then you have a very high peak there. And yeah, so I just try to move them around a little bit and see what it does to the groove. So yeah, this is it. These are the drums that I just recorded outside a few hours ago, and now it sounds like that. And I think it's really amazing what you can do with only field recordings. I thank you so much for watching. Thanks for being here. And yeah, subscribe as always, and I see you on the next one. Peace.